Hey, what's up YouTube? Today we are going to learn how to create a verification token so we can send it to our users who are registering onto our application. What this essentially does, it allows us to make sure the end user has access to the email and also to verify that email by us sending a randomized token to their email. They click on it and it verifies their email. You've probably seen this all across the web, and today we are going to do it using Next.js 14. We're going to do styling with Tailwind and Shadcn. We're going to send the email with Resend, and then we're also going to use Auth.js version 5 for the authentication. So if this sounds interesting to you, hit that like button and also subscribe for more content just like this. But other than that, let's get started and let's get coding. Okay, so let's jump into my screen. So I've actually already coded a bunch of the code that isn't related to the verification token. So as you can see here, we have a register page and a login page, and we are using Shadcn and Tailwind for the styling. And it is functional. We created two server actions, one for the login and one for the register. So this register is actually working. We can actually register a user and it gets sent back to our MongoDB database, and we're using Prism as the ORM. So the code will be inside the description of this YouTube video in a GitHub repository. So if you do, you could just clone that code and follow along. But like I said, we have already created the UI just to get that out of the way, because the tutorial is not about the UI, it's more about the verification token. And now let's jump into the code real quick and let's look at some of the code that we already created. So the first thing I want to do is show you how we configure Auth.js version 5. So if we actually jump back to the browser and we go to the docs, we need to install this package right here. So it says npm install next-auth at beta. Make sure you install this package, and this allows you to use Auth.js inside of your application. Let's go back to our code, and then there's three other packages you just want to install right off the bat because you're going to have to use them. That's if you're using Prism, which will be the ORM. So if we go to our package JSON, the other packages we're using is on line 12, which is at auth/prism-adapter. So make sure you install that package, and you could write it exactly how it says right here. That's how you install this package. Another package you should use is the @prism/client on line 14. And the other package you need to use, which is going to be a dev dependency, is going to be the Prism package. And there is docs for Prism, and those are what those three packages are. And this allows us to connect the database to our actual application. So make sure you have those four packages that I went over installed onto your application. Okay, so the next thing I want to go over real quick is configuring the auth, which I already did. And like I said, either copy the code from the GitHub link, or you can pause the screen and copy the code like that. But the first file you need to create when configuring your Auth.js version 5 is an auth.ts file. And this is going to be on the root layer of your application. So as you can see, we have auth.ts file. And what essentially this does is it defines your authentication. This is your pretty much entry index file right here. So what we have to do at the top is we have to import Next-Auth from Next-Auth. And we have our Prism adapter in here. We also have our database. As you can see, this is my database, and if I go to this file, this is where I initialize my Prism client, which allows us to use methods and query methods into our database. So this is a file you want to copy. You don't want to keep calling the Prism client in every file. You want to do one file and then export it as whatever variable you want, which I named a database. And in this file, as you can see, we are defining our handlers, which we're using get and post requests. Those are the request types that Next-Auth requires us to call. We're also defining the auth, which allows us to essentially get the session from the user that's logged in on whatever page we want. That is the new way of doing it in version 5. We have the sign in and sign out functions here too, which they are what they pretty much say. Sign in is going to allow you to sign in, and then sign out will sign out. And this is going to equal the Next-Auth object. And inside this object, this is where you can define your asynchronous callbacks. We are also going to spread through these auth config right here. So we are going to create another file, which I'm going to show you in a second. And this is going to be all of the stuff in that auth config file that we're creating. We also have to define the session, which is going to be of strategy JWT. And then we have our defining our adapter, which is the Prism adapter. And then we're just passing in that Prism client invocation right here, which is that database that we imported at the top. Okay, so that's your Auth.js file in a nutshell. And that is on the root layer of your Next.js application. Next one you want to create is your auth.config.ts file. So this file is going to define your providers. So this could be either Google, GitHub, credentials, whatever providers you're going to want to use, you define it in here. And the reason why we are defining it here is because Prism is not compatible on the edge. And if you are using an ORM that is compatible on the edge, you can actually define your provider in the auth.ts file, but this separates it even better, just organizes the code a little better, and it's just one extra file on the root file layer, which is the auth.config.ts file. And we're defining the credentials provider, and then we are using the async authorize callback function, and inside of this is just some login functionality code in here. And then this is where we're exporting it. And then this is how we imported it here at the top as auth config. And then we spread through the syntax of all of the data and props inside of that right here in the auth.ts file. So that is why it looks like that. So there is an auth.ts auth config. And then the last file we need to configure your Auth.js is inside of the app directory. And then it needs to be inside of an API folder, and then inside of an auth folder, and then inside of a catch-all route, which has a syntax of brackets and then ... Next-Auth. So as you can see here, top left, and then inside there is a route.ts file, and it is literally one line of code. We're just exporting those handlers, which are going to be the get and post, and that is coming from that auth.ts file. So those are your 3 files you need to configure Auth.js. We also went over the UI of how our application looks. Like I said, copy that code from GitHub or create your own UI. And also we are, like I said, using server actions. So I have a login server action, which is on the server, and this allows us to log in. And then we also have a register server action, which allows us to register our user to our MongoDB database. So that is a quick overview of what we're going to do. Now let's actually jump into the verification process of how we can actually create a verification token using Auth.js. Okay, so those packages from Prism that I told you to install, they should be installed. And what that did for you was it would create a Prism folder for you if you did it successfully. So we have a Prism folder, and inside that we have a schema.prism. This is where we're going to be able to define the data that we are sending to our database. So as you can see, we already have a user model, which I created, and you can write to, and it has an ID, a name, email, and password. And there is going to be one thing we're going to add to this, and it will be email verified. So that's going to be the first step. And what it's going to be is it's going to be a date, time, and it's going to be optional. So it's not going to be required. It is going to be optional for the user because some applications will require maybe yours, like a Google provider login. So we don't want to make the email verified to be pretty much necessary or required. We want to make it optional, so we're going to have this question mark. So we want to store this in the user so we can use this later to actually see if they're allowed to log in or not. So that is the first step inside the Prism schema. Next thing we want to do is we want to define a model for our verification token. So we need to create a verification token and send it to the database, but we need to create how the token is going to look. So we could call this model verification token or whatever you want. And what we're going to have here is we're going to have an ID of string. I'm just going to use what Copilot's showing me and then adjust stuff as needed. So we have an ID of that decorator, which is for MongoDB only. So whatever database you're using, go to the Prism docs and see what this decorator should be. But this is the MongoDB decorator for an ID. Next thing we need to have is we want to have the email. That is going to be a string. Then we are going to have our token. We can remove the user ID, and we can remove the created at, and we want to have an expires. And the reason why we want to have an expires is because this verification token should expire after a certain amount of time. This verification token shouldn't be pretty much valid forever. And that is very common across all web applications. Okay. So the next thing you want to do too is you want to make sure We're going to add this decorator, which is an at unique. And what this essentially does is going to make sure that the email and the token have a unique combination. So we're never going to have the same email with the token or token with email or vice versa. It's always going to be unique. So that is what this line right here is doing, line 30. Okay, so now we have created our verification model. And the next thing you want to do is every time you make a change on your schema.prism file, you want to make sure you open the terminal, shut your development server down if it's running, run npx prism generate, and this will update this model to make sure it connects with your database. And I always just like doing npx prism db push just to make sure everything is synced in line with your database and Prism. So that is the first step in the verification token process. Step 2 is actually generating or creating the token. So what we are going to do is inside of our lib folder right here, we're going to open this and let's create a new file called token.ts, and let's actually create this token so we can use it. So first thing first is let's create a function, and this is going to be an asynchronous function. Let's just name it generate verification token. And what we're going to accept in here is we're going to accept the email. So we need the email from when we register the account. So that's where we're going to get it from, and you'll see it all connect later, how it's going to work. So we're creating this function, and the first thing we need to do is we need to, let me put a comment, and it's telling us generate a random token. So a great package that we can install, which I think I already have installed on this application, is UUID version 4 package. This will pretty much create a random string of characters. So it's npm I UUID version 4. So we could go back to the code. I could paste it here, but I think it's already installed. Okay. And now we have that package installed. So let's import it at the top. So we're going to import it above this function. And let's create this random token. So we could store it in a token variable. And it is going to be UUID version 4, like that, and invoking it. Next, we want to make sure we define the expires. So to do this, we're going to say new date. And then we're going to get the time. We're going to call the get time. And then what we can do here is we can set an expires of when this token is not valid anymore. So GitHub Copilot is recommended 24 hours. So we're just going to go with that. And you could change the hours based on the numbers here. So say if you want 1 hour, you could change this to 1, and then I could put this to 1. So this will be expires after 1 hour. That's what it means right there. Okay. So we have the token variable and the expires variable. Next thing we need to check is we need to check if the token, check if a token, let me see how I can word this, check if a token already exists for the user. Perfect. So sometimes a user might request a token request, a verification token, and then they come back a few minutes later, they never redeemed their token per se or verified it, and they click it again. So we want to make sure that we reset that token and pretty much send them a new one, because it's going to cause problems if we don't send them a new one and they keep requesting a new one, and they're going to wonder why the verification token process isn't working. So this is just pretty much a safety precaution in a sense. So what we're going to call this is we're going to say existing token. So if there's an existing token, we're going to store it in this variable, and we are going to await, and then we're going to have to create a function which we are going to call get verification token by email, and then we're just going to pass in the email. And the reason why we're doing it by email is because that's what we're getting here inside of this whole function inside of this specific scope. So we're going to get an error because we don't have this function right here made. So let's actually create this function in a totally separate file. We could create it inside of our data, and what we can name this inside of our data folder is verification-token.ts. And what we need to import here at the top is we need to import the database And the reason why is because we need to run some invocations and queries into our database using Prism. So we're going to create a function called get verification token by email, which is perfect. It's asynchronous. It's accepting the email. And what we're going to do here is we could do a try catch. And inside of the try, we could say const verification token equals await database dot, and then we have that model verification token, which we created in step 1, dot find first. That's a method we can use. And we have to do where there is email. And we can just put email, or you could do email like that. Doesn't matter, it's the same thing. And then what we can do here is after the where and this function, we can return the verification token, just like that. And then in this, we could just do console.log, and we could console log the error or whatever error checks you want to do there. So now we are exporting this verification token by email. What we can do here is make sure we import it at the top. So as you can see, we are importing it at the top now, and we are good to go to the next step of this specific token. So we are now checking if the token already exists by calling this database function and check in to see if there's a verification token in the system. So next thing we want to do, so we're going to say if there's an existing token. So if there's an existing token, what we need to do is we need to delete that token, right? So we need to await, and then we have to use a database function again, which we have to import at the top. So I just did like that, dot verification token dot delete. And we are deleting it where the ID equals the existing token dot ID. So if you hover over like existing token, you could see the field types that we have for the existing token. And remember, these are the field types we create in step 1. We have ID, email, token, expires. And ID is the unique identifier for the existing token. So we need the unique identifier to delete the verification token if there is an existing token already. So that means they keep clicking, requesting verification tokens within that hour time frame. That's what this whole code means right here. Okay, so if they get past that step, next thing we need to do is we just need to create a new verification token, right? So that means they don't have a verification token, or we deleted it for them. So we could say, we can store it in a variable, const verification token equals await database dot verification token dot create, right? We're creating a new one. And we are going to create it. We have to have a data object. And what we can pass in there are, obviously they have the ID, which is unique. We can't change that. We have the email, which we're getting. We have the token, which we created on line 7. And then we have the expires, which we created on line 8. And what we can do here is we could say it is a new date and expires then. So we're just passing in that expires variable into this new date right here, and we are storing it inside the expires in our database. And after that, all we have to do is say return verification token. So that is us generating the verification token. And now, obviously, it's not going to work because we haven't put it anywhere in our actual code. So the most logical place, if you had to guess before doing it, is you have to actually put it inside of the register server action. And the reason why is because when somebody registers, we need to send them the generate verification token. And you're probably wondering, where should we put it? Where should we put it? Inside of that server action for register. And the best answer to put that is pretty much at the end. After all of your checks are done on the register, like if you're hashing the password, if you're making sure there's a user not related to the email that they're trying to register with, all of those checks, if they all pass and succeed, then you should send the verification email. So just think of it logically, and it would make sense if you start thinking of it like that. So what we're going to do is we are going to go after we create the user, right? And then we're returning a success message of email verification was sent, right? Next, after we create the user, we know it was successful register process. We are going to generate a verification token right here. And we can store this in a variable too. Verification token equals await, and we created that function called generate verification token inside of our lib folder, right? So now we imported it at the top. And what we want to do here is we are just going to pass in the email like that. Perfect. So that is generating the verification token. And we can do a check on it before we move on to the next step to make sure we have nothing wrong. So let's open up our terminal, run the development server. And while this is opening up, make sure you guys don't forget to like and subscribe. And let's go to the register page. And let me open up my MongoDB just to make sure I don't have a user related to any of these emails, which is not a big deal. We can actually do that later. So let's go to the register. Let's register with some random email. So here, Brett, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to click register. And it says email verification was sent. And that is only sent after pretty much all of the checks are made and we actually have no errors. So our code should have ran, and to check that, we could go inside of our database. So like I said, I'm using MongoDB. I do have videos on my channel explaining how to set up MongoDB. It's very simple, very easy, but I'm assuming you guys know how to do that if you're watching this video. So what we're going to do is let's open up the right database, and if it was successful on the verification token, it should have actually created a new verification token with our field types. So if you look, it says development, verification token. And as you can see, this verification token was just created with that email. So let me zoom in if I can. So you see that email I just signed up with. We have this random token that was generated with the UUID version 4 package. You see here's the token. And then we also have the expires as well with a unique identifier that MongoDB creates. So everything is working and step 2 is good. So let's move on to step 3. Okay, so step 3 is going to be creating a function that actually sends the token through an email to the user that the email is pretty much provided by with the register form. So we are going to go back first. Before actually going back in our code, let's go to Google and type in resend email. And Resend is essentially a modern way of sending emails through a React application. So they do have a free version, but it is limited when it comes to the free version. And the way it's limited is you pretty much, I don't know, let me actually look at the pricing real quick. So if we go to, where is the pricing? Maybe homepage. Yeah, pricing. So as you can see, the $0 a month plan, you do be able to connect one domain to Resend. Pretty much this is a production domain that you can use, or you can upgrade to the Pro, which is $20 a month, and you get 50,000 emails a month, no daily sending limit, and you could have unlimited domains. So right now I am on the $20 a month package because I do use it for other websites, but you could sign up for free, no credit card required, and you could use the free plan. And pretty much essentially when you get onto Resend, let me just go back on. So you get on to Resend, and there's another key point that I want to mention too. If you are deploying using Vercel and you pretty much use that domain that's like vercel.app, that doesn't count as a production domain. That is actually Vercel's domain. So you can't use that as your domain. So you do actually have to buy a legit domain like a .com, .co, .io, whatever it is, but you cannot use Vercel's domain. So there is a way to get around sending emails if you don't have a domain, just to test out if you're just doing development work in your local host. And that is by going to their docs. Let me go to their docs real quick, and let's go over how we can set this up. So their docs are pretty straightforward, and what we can do is we can do the Next.js quick start, And the first package we should install is this Resend package. So let me do that first and then continue my thoughts of what I was doing. I'm going to shut down my server, install the Resend package, and we are going to go back to the documentation. And then what you can do here is you can create an email template, which we're not going to do. This is just an extra step. It makes your emails pretty much look better, which I'll actually have a different video on that of how you could use React Email with Resend to make your emails very custom and very custom to your brand. And the next pretty much step 3 is going to be to create an API file under your app-api-send-route.ts. So what we're going to do here is app API, I think it was send, and then a route.ts. You could create it like that, or there's actually another way to create it, which we are going to do. So you could do it through an API, or you could just do it inside of your lib folder. So let's delete this. And we are going to go inside of our lib folder, and we're going to go to new file, and we're going to say mail.ts. And inside of this is where we're going to pretty much create how our email is going to be sent. So we're going to import that Resend package that we did. And this is going to be from Resend, like this. And next thing we have to do is we have to initialize Resend. So we can do const resend equals new resend. And then you do parentheses, and you usually want to store this API key inside of your env file. So I'm going to do a process.env.resend underscore API underscore key, just like that. I'm going to copy this, go to my env file, paste it, and then press equals. And another thing that I forgot to mention, which is pretty important, is when you're doing Next-Auth or Auth.js, you had to have this specific env variable named exactly like this, Next-Auth underscore secret. And then it could be anything. You could just put any random value you want. And make sure, like I said, is underneath this name, and you need to have this for Next-Auth to work. So that is a good point. Thank God I went to the env file, because if you don't do this, you're going to run into errors and you're going to wonder what the error is. So that is the issue right there, is make sure you have a secret key for Next-Auth. Okay, so let's go to Resend real quick. And what we need to do is we need to go to sign in. So make sure you're signed into your account. Go to API keys here at the left, and you want to create an API key. And I'm just going to do verification token tutorial full access, and then you can just do all domains, press add, and you can only see this key once. Store it safely. So make sure you copy it, because after you close this, you won't be able to see the key again. So I'm going to close the key, and as you can see, it's here on my dashboard. And what you're going to do is you're going to copy that key and then just paste it inside of your env variable like this. And if we go back to the mail, this is where it's being used inside of our mail. Okay. Another thing I want to do is I want to say const domain, and we're going to equal it to HTTP localhost 3000, like this. Okay, so that is just going to be our domain init variable that we stored as domain. So now let's actually create the function. We're going to name it send verification email. This will be an asynchronous function. And what we are going to accept in here is we're going to accept the email, which is a string, and the token, which is a string as well. And you'll see why we're accepting those two. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a confirmation link. So we're going to name a confirmation link, and we're going to use the template literal. We're going to say domain. So I did domain because when you go into production, you could just change this to your production domain, and it'll be easy to change. And this is going to pretty much be a path of where we are going to send the user, right? So I'm going to name this domain / we can name it verify email. And then we are going to add a query to it, and it's going to be the token. And it is going to equal the token, right? And we don't want to have it equal the email because we only need the email to pretty much be able to send the email. That's why we need the email. We need to know which email we're sending it to. And this confirmation link is going to be essentially inside of the body of the email. So you're going to click this confirmation link and go to localhost 3000 / verify email. And we are setting the query string of token equal to token. So what we can do is we could use await resend .emails.send. And you can find this in their docs on that page I was on. And this is where we can use an email that Resend allows us to use. So this is what I was talking about earlier and kind of cut myself off, is if you don't have a production domain, you must use this email. So it's going to be onboarding at resend.com. Let me just confirm it is. And like I said, if you do not use this email, it's not going to work. Unless you do have a domain that's hooked up, then use that domain. So let me just make sure real quick. Okay, so as you can see, it says onboarding at resend.dev. So you could use this email. Make sure you use this email if you don't have production. So it's going to be from onboarding there. And the next one is going to be to, and that is why we have the email. So we're saying it to that email. We have to define the subject, which we could say verify your email. And then the last thing we need is we could put this as HTML. And what we can do in here is we can have a template literal. And I'm just going to copy something over real quick to make this quicker. It's going to be a simple P tag. And what we're going to have in here is click with an A tag, right? And it is going to be the confirmation link. So click here to to verify your email. Perfect. And then make sure you have commas after everything so you don't have an error. So that is us being able to send an email, this whole function. So we have to plug this function in because we're not using it, right? So we are also going to plug it in inside of the register server action. So after all of the checks and then we generate the verification token, right? We need to await the send verification email, which is the function we just created. And that is accepting email and is accepting the verification token .token. And we're getting the token because we generated it here. And as you can see, hover over that. And one of the fields inside of the object is a token. And that's why it's written like that. Okay, so let's go back to our mail. And another key point too is when you're testing in development, whatever email you use to create an account, so whatever account you're on, you must send it to that email only. Obviously, like I said, if you have a production ready domain, you can send it to any emails you want, but you must send it to the email that is associated with your Resend account. That's the only way it's going to work. So for me, I'm going to make sure I have an account. So I do have an account with the email that I have with Resend. So I'm going to make sure I register with this email. So I'm just deleting it from my database, refreshing the page, and we're going to test this out to see if I actually get an email. It'll be nice if I could probably start the development server because that's the only way it's going to work. And let's test to see if we are actually sending an email. So we are opening localhost 3000. Let's go to the register page. Let's register an account with the email associated with your Resend account. We're going to click register. Email verification was sent, so that means everything went smooth. But to confirm, we could do this again. we could refresh the page, and we should have 2 verification tokens in here. Because remember, the first one was the popular 11 domain at Yahoo, and then the other one's my DA Brett Westwood at Gmail. So we have this verification token, and we should have been able to send it with Resend. So let me open up my email. And as you can see, 12:18 p.m., which it is right now, it was sent 0 minutes ago, if you guys could see. 0 minutes ago, we have a click here to verify your email from onboarding@resend.dev. And the subject line is verify your email. So the Resend is working, and we're actually sending an email. And then if we click here, that was that confirmation link we created with the domain variable. So if we click, let's look at the URL. The URL is localhost 3000/verify email with the query string of the token attached. Perfect. So that is step 3. And now let's move on to step 4. So step 4 is essentially creating this page that we have not created yet, and is going to be under this specific route here. So we have to create a route for verify email. Obviously the rest is just the query string. So let's go into our code. Inside of our app directory, let's create a new folder called verify-email. Let's just create this as a page.tsx. And inside of here, let's run the command RIFCE, which creates a React functional component. We just call this the verify email page. And this page, we want to make it client, right? But honestly, what we can do is recreate a component called verify email form. And then we can make this client. And let's create this in the components, auth, or actually components, new file, verify email form.tsx, RIFCE, verify email form. Mark this as use client because we are going to have to use some client side hooks. Let's import this onto the actual page. And let's go back to our code real quick. And if we refresh the page, you can see it's not a 404, not anymore. It just says verify email form. So we created the page. And let's go to this verify email form, and let's now actually work on the logic. So the thing we need to do is we need to extract that token from the URL, which we passed in as a query. So to do that, the hook that we have to use, which is the main hook to make this whole thing work, is called the use search params. And this allows us to read the parameters inside of the URL search. Another thing we can use is we can also use the use effect hook and the use state hook as well. And this is going to allow us pretty much just to run the command right when the page runs. So the use effect and use search params hook is the main thing we need. So inside of this div, I am going to copy some stuff over because this is just UI and Shadcn stuff, and just paste it in, and it's just styling stuff. And if you do want to see what it is, you could go back, look through the GitHub repo, and see exactly how this stuff was styled. So we're just going to make sure we import all these components. And then we are also using the use state hook because we got to store the success and all that inside of the success or error. So let's do that. Control C. So we're storing the state of the error success in the use state hook. And then we have this beat loader, which if there's an error, which I don't even have the package for, and I'm just going to put a p tag saying error instead. Or if there's no error, there's no that, just put loading. Oh, wrong button. Okay, so we're going to do that. And like I said, we're going to use the use search params. So we're going to say cons search params equals the use search params. And to get the token, it's very simple. We're just going to store it in a token variable, and we're going to use the search params.get method, and we are getting the token. And the reason why it's token is because if you look at the URL, it is token equals, and then it's the token value. And we're the ones who put token, if you remember. So if you go to your mail inside of your lib, you could see we put token here equals the token. If we put something else like token value equals token, then you must get the token value from the use search params. But since we didn't do that, all we need to put is token, just like this. And if you want, you can console log the token, which I'm pretty positive we're getting, so I'm not going to console log it. And that is how you get the token from the URL. Next thing I want to do is I want to create a use effect. And the reason why we're doing this use effect is because we need to see if this token is verified right when the page loads. So right when the page mounts, we want to see. And what we are going to do here, it's not going to be token, is we are going to have inside of the use effect. So here's our use effect. We're going to call the onSubmit function. You can name this whatever you want. We're just going to name it onSubmit. And the onSubmit function is going to fire right when the page pretty much mounts. So let's create this onSubmit. It is going to be an asynchronous function. Or actually, it's not going to be an asynchronous function. My fault, guys. We are going to use the use callback function. And this is coming from React. Just like that. So we're going to say const onSubmit, use callback, right? We're going to do it into an arrow function. And then let's do some checks. So we're going to say if there is a success or error, we're just going to return. And the reason why we're getting this error is because we haven't done the mount, like the dependency array at the end, like that. So now it's no error on the use callback. So if there's a success or error, we're just going to return. Another thing is we're going to check if there's no token. So if there's no token, which, I mean, there could be no token sometimes, it could run into an error. We're just going to set the error to no token provided and return the function. And then those are pretty much all of our checks. So the next thing we have to do is we actually have to code the logic. So we're going to create a thing called new verification token, like this, or no, new verification. And we are going to pass them the token. And what this is we have to create this as a server action. So we do have our folder at the top called actions. So if we look here, and what we can do is we can just pretty much create a new file called new verification.ts. Oh, not .ys. And now we could actually write the logic of us checking the verification token when they land on this page after clicking the link from the email. So first thing is inside this use server, we need to mark it as a use server. Next, I want to import the database so we could do some queries from the database. We also have a function inside of my data folder, which I recreated, which was called get user by email. And I just want to show you that real quick. Pretty much it's just us getting the user from our database by providing the email and searching for it using email. Okay. So we have that import at the top, and then we also are going to import the get verification token, and we actually have to create this one. So we're going to say get verification token by token, right? And this is going to be, we could actually create this one inside of our data folder too. So inside of the verification token file, inside of your data folder, we are going to create this function. So we're just going to get it, const get verification token by token, it is going to be asynchronous, accepting the token as a string. And GitHub Copilot's pretty much dead on. We are just doing a try catch block, and we are doing a database invocation inside of the verification token model. We are finding where the token is the token and just returning that verification token. And let me just get rid of this error by, oh, we haven't exported yet. Yeah, so we haven't exported yet, so we're not going to be able to get rid of that error. And let's do export const new verification. This will be an asynchronous value. It is going to accept the token, which we're passing in, and it's a string. And what we're going to do is we're going to see if there is an existing token. So first thing first, let's see if there's actually a token there. So this is a check, so get verification token by token, and passing in that token. That's the function we just created. Okay, so next we're going to say if there's no existing token, we could just say return error invalid token. And we are storing the error and the success and the state on the front end, so it should display if there is a success or error message. So that's why we're writing exactly like that. We're also going to see if the token has expired. So we're going to say equals new date, and we're going to get the existing token dot token, or not dot token, dot expires. And if that is less than the new date, then that means it has expired. Okay, so we're going to say if it has expired, we're just going to return an error saying token has expired. Perfect. So now we just need to make sure we have an existing user. So we're going to await get user by email, and we're going to use the existing token dot email. Okay. And we're just going to say if there's no existing user, return an error saying user not found. Okay. Now here's the good part. So now we can actually update our database and our user. So we're going to say database dot user dot update, and what we're going to update is where the ID is the existing user dot ID, like that. And what we have to do here, comma, and we are updating it. And what we're going to update is email verified. So where we're getting this from is on step 1 inside the schema.prism. We added on line 20 the email verified with the date and time. So we're updating that because right now it's technically null because it is optional. So it just becomes null or undefined depending on how you defined it. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say new date. So whenever this function fires, it's just going to give it the new date of whatever time and date it is at the moment. And then just email, we're going to do the existing token.email. Just to make sure everything looks good. Yep, everything looks good. And then let's run one more database query where we're going to go inside the database.verification token, and we're going to delete that token. And then if everything looks good, we could just return a success message saying email verified, just like that. Let's go back into our page. We could import this server action now. And as you can see, the server action is imported. And now we could finish pretty much the functionality of the code on the front end, right? So let me get to that real quick. So what we could do here is we could do a .then. And then we could just pass this in as data. The data, if it's successful, we're just going to do it as data. So if data.success, so if it's success, let's set that success message to data.success. And then we're just going to put if data.error, let's set the error to the data.error. Okay, and let's do a .catch just in case. And what we can do here is we can console log the error and set the error to an unexpected error has occurred. And we could just pass in the token inside of the dependency array. We could also pass in success and error as well inside of this use callback array here. So what this page is doing, again, is you land on the page, right when it mounts, this onSubmit function is called, which is here. It calls it, does a few checks, runs that server action of the new verification token, and if it's successful, it's going to set it to successful. And in the server action, it essentially updates your email verify to the specific date that function was ran on. So that means your email was verified. And it just sends you a success message pretty much saying that now you're able to log in. So that is step number 4. So let's go to step 5 to actually be able to let us log in if the email is verified or not. So Auth.js version 5, even version 4, allows us to use asynchronous callbacks, and these are very powerful callback functions that run when a specific event is fired or something happens. So if we go inside of our Auth.js file, right, we can actually create an asynchronous callback to allow the user to log in or not based on certain criteria or parameters, right? So what we can do is there's an asynchronous callback called the sign in callback. So right above the session one that I just have here, we're just going to have the sign in. And what we're going to pass into it is going to be the user and the account. And the account is pretty much just if there is a Google provider or not, or GitHub, whatever you're using. And the user is the credentials provider. I'm just having an account here because a lot of people do use the Google provider, and this logic is going to be good if you do have the Google's or GitHub or Facebook provider. So just follow along with this. So what we're going to do is if the account, oh man, I can't even spell. .provider does not equal, I still can't spell. If the account .provider does not equal their credentials, right? So if it's everything else, it could be anything else. Let's just return true. So how this callback works is if it returns true, it allows you to sign in. And if you return false, it doesn't allow you to sign in. So at the very end, it should return true. That's why we're still getting an error. Perfect. So we're doing this one check. If the provider is not the credentials, return true. That means if it's the Google provider, it's already a verified email, let them log in. So next we are going to do look for the existing user, right? So we're going to do await get user by ID, and we're going to pass in the user.id. And what it's saying is it's of argument type string or undefined. So what we can do here is just fix that type error like that. So we're getting the existing user, which is the ID, name, email verified, or password. And as you can see, email verified, it could either be date or null. So what we're going to do is we're going to say if there is no existing user dot email verified, right? If there's no email verified, so that means it's if it's null, we're just going to return false. They're not allowed to log in. So this pretty much 5 to 6 lines of code right here is the logic of if they can log in or not, depending if their email is verified or not. So let's test this out, right? So obviously this says invalid token. Let's start from the beginning and try everything out from the start. So I'm going to delete the user, delete the verification token, and delete the user. Okay, so we are going to log in. I mean, not log in. We're going to register. Email verification was sent. So I'm not even going to verify my email. I'm just going to try to log in because YOLO, right? Some people just try to log in. They don't think it's going to work. Like they think they can still log in. So we're going to do the same email and we're going to try to log in. Please confirm your email address. As you can see, that is an error message I sent to the backend if we get the specific error of return false. So we have to confirm the email address. And let me see where I put that specific error, which please confirm. So it's inside the login action. So if you go inside the login action, I have a try catch here at the bottom. And if the error is instance of auth error, and if the error.type is a credential sign in, we're going to return this error. Other than that default, we're going to have an error. Please confirm your email address. So this is inside of the login server action. That is why we're getting this. Please confirm your email address. So let's go and confirm the email address, right? So verify email, the one that was just sent a minute ago, we're going to click. We're on the page. It loaded, it did the use effect when it mounted, and we got a success message saying email verified, right? So now let's go back to our login page, which that's not even the login page, it's just /login. Or /signup, I made it. I made a /signup. Or sign in. And now let's try to log in. And as you can see, I am redirected to the dashboard and I am logged in. I probably should console log this session. Let me do that real quick to show you that I'm actually logged in. But that is essentially how you do the verification token and how you can create it and pretty much make sure that they have access to that email. But let me just make sure that I am logged in. So let's go to our dashboard page, which we don't even have created. So let's create a new folder called dashboard. Page.tsx, RAFCE. We're going to import auth, right? And this is coming from @/auth. And it might be wrapped in a curly brace, which it is. Okay, cool. So what we can do is const session equals await auth like this. And this could be asynchronous. And what we can do here is we could say hi and then session dot user dot email. So let's go to our dashboard page and see if it says that. So as you could see, it does say hi and then my email. So we are logged in and we can access the session through that auth object that is on the Auth.js file when we configured it at the very beginning of the video. Okay guys, so I know this was a long video, so thank you guys for watching if you did stay through the whole video. But other than that, if you did like the video, hit that like button and also subscribe if you want content very similar to this. It does motivate me when you guys do hit that like button, subscribe as well. And like I said, if you guys do have any questions, leave them in the comments section or join our Discord room, which we can answer a bunch of questions related to Next.js, Auth.js, React, anything JavaScript related to as well, we'll be able to answer. We have a group of about 300 people in there right now, so it'll be nice to have more people join. But other than that, thank you guys for watching till the end. Everything will be timestamped and hope you guys have a great day.